Recently, the platform fighter multiversus was breaking and shattering records left and right, which is huge news, especially for a fighting game. But things changed not too long ago when the community began saying that multiversus is dying as 90% of the player base vanished. This left people feeling a little discouraged about multiversus. Some of the community kind of just dropping the game entirely as a result of the news. And sure, 90% of a player base vanishing can definitely seem scary, no doubt about it. We don't have to look very far in order to see this trend happening throughout video games. This is something that we see not only with Apex Legends, but we also see it with Halo, with headlines like Halo Infinite's Steam player count falls below Halo the Master Chief Collection for the first time. New World is another game that ended up having pretty much the same exact issue that Multiversus had, where 90% of its player base vanished since launch. Realm Royale had 95% of its player base on Steam gone. And even games like Elden Ring, an absolutely phenomenal game, a game that I obsessed over for a good 6 months admittedly, has had 90% of its fanbase also gone. Although this is kind of understandable for something like Elden Ring, which is a largely single-player experience for a lot of people, despite its multiplayer aspect, once people finish the game, it's understandable why they would just leave. For a fighting game that doesn't have a story mode, for a fighting game that is predominantly online, losing 90% of your player base you think would leave you pretty disheveled. But before we look at Multiversus numbers, let's look at some other really famous and prominent fighting games. For example, Street Fighter V, a reasonably old game that has a concurrent player base of 1,800 and an average of 2,100. Not too bad for a fighting game, not the most, but certainly a reasonable amount of players. As to where another pretty old game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, with a strong IP at its back, has a concurrent player base of 3,600 players and an average of 1,500 players. Still a pretty healthy community, especially for a fighting game, which is a pretty niche genre. I'm still able to find games pretty consistently within Dragon Ball FighterZ, at a wide range of ranks as well. Moving up the timeline, going to a little bit more recent of a game, we have Guilty Gear Strive coming in at 2,000 players. Once again, pretty good numbers. So what's Multiversus sitting at? When we pull up Multiversus, after losing 90% of its player base, it sits at 7,500 people playing, with a 30-day average of 8,000 players. If you ask me, the game is definitely alive and kicking. I don't think Multiversus is nearly as dead as people make it sound, especially when we have another game we can easily compare this to, such as DNF Duel, which even at its highest, within 30 days, has less than 100 players. Sure, there's still people to play with, no doubt, so it's not 100% dead, but relatively speaking, yeah, the game is kind of dead. Now, as part of this argument, I intentionally left out of the conversation up until this point, and that is despite the fact that Multiversus lost 90% of its player base, it still has more than most fighting games have, but it also has cross-platform, meaning that while sure, 7,000 people are playing on Steam, that's not counting all of the people playing on all of the other available consoles. That gives Multiversus a huge pool of people that you can still play with and find games with. In short, I think Multiversus is perfectly fine. If anything, it's following the normal trend of video games nowadays across all genres, and it's kind of averaging itself out, finding its place for the long haul. And of course, it'll have its highs and lows, but for a fighting game, a genre that is super niche, the game is doing phenomenally, especially when you consider the fact that these are just the Steam numbers, not including cross-platform. This is doing better than most fighting games. So yeah, if you've been worried about Multiversus' success, if you've been worried about its longevity, I don't think you have anything to be concerned about after this. But dudes, let me know what you think about the game in the comments down below. Are you still having a blast with it? Because me personally, while sure, I've certainly slowed down on playing it, I'm still having an absolute ton of fun with the game. But dudes, that's gonna wrap up today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the discussion, and thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next one.